Hello everyone and welcome back to The Games Must Go On, a series where pain and suffering is the norm. Today we're going to be taking a look at Minecraft, a game where your entire goal is to build blocks in Minecrafts. Where today we're going to be asking, can you beat the game without wood? So without further ado, let's hop right into this. The rules here are simple. I'm banning doing anything related to wood. The only exception to this is using wooden things in the overworld. Take a chest for example. A chest has wood in its crafting recipe, which means it's banned. And because of this, we're not allowed to destroy a chest if we come across one, and we're not allowed to have a chest in our inventory at any point. The only time we're allowed to do anything with a chest is if we find one, we're allowed to open it up and take the stuff inside of it. But that's it. If we break these rules, we're starting this run all over again. So you can already see how this is going to be a problem. The last thing that I should mention before starting this is that Minecraft is a popular game and there have been several challenges done on it, including similar ones to this. And there's 4 that I wanted to bring up right now. One being regular no wood challenges. Yes, people have thought of this before, however, they normally allow things like tools. Yeah, those have wood in their crafting recipes and will be banned in our run. However, the second thing I wanted to talk about is another no wood challenge done by Rogue Gamer. He actually had the same rules that I did, but he eventually failed in the end. The next run that I want to mention is the bucket only run done by Game Night. A lot of the strategies used in his video are similar to ours. However, while we are allowed to use armor, we're banned from things like beds and crafting tables, which will become somewhat of a problem. The last run that I want to bring mention to is GeoSquare's Absolutely Nothing run. That's because he used absolutely nothing, which would make his challenge a lot more difficult than ours, if not for the fact that he used peaceful mode and a predetermined seed. We're going into our challenge with a completely normal game of Minecraft. This means a random seed and normal difficulty. And just for your information, I'm going to be playing this on 1.5 Java Edition. So with all that said, let's get right into this run. The first question that we have to ask is, what do we do first? In a normal Minecraft playthrough, you would walk over to the nearest tree, punch it to death, grab its wood, make wooden tools to make stone tools, to upgrade to iron, to diamond, to finally mine some obsidian to make our way to the nether. Unfortunately, every single one of those steps is impossible in this run. Remember, tools have wood in their handles, which means they're banned, so we're going to have to get a little creative. Now there is another way to get to the nether, and that's by using a bucket. By taking water and lava and mixing them in a particular shape, we can actually cast a nether portal without using tools. The only thing this requires is a bucket, so it's a much more plausible strategy than anything else we got, so we're going to have to go with it. In order to make the bucket needed, we're going to need 2 things. We're going to need iron to make the bucket with, and we're going to need a crafting table to make the bucket on. Now, unfortunately, we can't just make a crafting table out of thin air because those are made out of wood. The only way we're actually going to be able to do this is if we find a crafting table in the wild. So it's time to get looking. You might be wondering how we're actually going to find a crafting table in the wild, and the answer is as simple as finding a village, as villages can spawn with crafting tables. But hold your horses, because we still have to find a village with a crafting table, and it turns out I have absolutely horrible luck. Now, first thing that you should probably know is that not all villages will spawn with a crafting table, and I don't mean villages in the sense of unique villages, I mean in the sense of village types, as things like the taiga villages won't spawn with a crafting table at all. Instead, we have to search for a desert village, and not even those are guaranteed to have your crafting table. But what's important is that they can spawn with a crafting table, and while it did take 6 hours of searching the Minecraft realm, I did eventually find a singular crafting table, which means we can finally craft our bucket. Well, we do actually need the iron to make the bucket, but that's a lot easier to come across as there's a couple of ways of getting it. The first way is by scavenging shipwrecks, as we can actually get iron from the chests inside. The other way, and the way that I opted for here, was to kill this iron golem, because fun fact, the iron beast is actually made out of iron, and when you kill it, it actually drops, you will never guess, iron. Which means we finally have everything that we need to craft the most important thing in the entire run, a singular bucket. Now that Steve has a bucket in his blocky hand, it's finally time to make a nether portal. All we need now is some water and lava to mix. And while water is easy enough because oceans exist, lava is going to be a little more tricky. The good news is I did find some lava. The bad news is it's pretty far away. In order to make it there, we actually have to go across some plains, up and over a mountain, across some more plains, down into a ravine, and then grab some lava, and then make our way all the way back. So it's definitely quite the hike. And because it's in a ravine, we're gotta deal with monsters as well. So I wanted to take them down before I even thought about bringing my bucket. I found the best way to protect myself was to essentially baby-proof the entire area. That meant building giant barricades that the monsters couldn't get over. However, even though I barricaded most of the areas, skeletons still found a way in, and they ended up killing me a couple of times while I had my bucket. So it was definitely a mad dash to recover my inventory at times. But after quite a while, to say the least, I was eventually able to get enough lava to make ourselves a nether portal, which means it's finally time to light it. Now I didn't have a flint and steel on me, so we had to find a different way to light it. Now there is a way to light it by burning wood right next to it, which will catch it on fire, but we can't do that because we're not allowed to destroy wood, and yes, that includes us setting it aflame. Instead though, I decided to opt for wool, as it's also flammable and we're actually allowed to use that. And with our nether portal lit, it's finally time to enter it and move to the nether. Finally, I have some good news. We actually spawn basically directly over a nether fortress, which means whenever we die, it'll be really easy to get back here. The bad news is we're going to be dying here a lot. We have to get 6 blaze rods, and there's an army of enemies to stop us from doing just that, including the blazes themselves. So let's actually talk about our attackers. Because this was done before the Nether update, we only have a few different mobs to talk about, the first of which being the skeleton. These guys, more often than not, will kill us, and that's because their accuracy might be low most of the time, but whenever they do hit, because I'd never brought armor down into the Nether, it almost always led to death. Even when we were on the offensive, these guys can just fire too quickly, and without a weapon, we can't kill them fast enough to avoid dying ourselves. Not to mention that skeletons have 3 different drops: bones, bows, and arrows, where bows and arrows will actually be landmines for us, as we're not allowed to have them in our inventory, so we'll have to avoid them whenever we kill a skeleton if they drop. Next up are wither skeletons, which are a lot easier than the regular variety, as they only use melee attacks which we can keep at bay by repeatedly punching them, as well as the fact that they're 3 blocks tall, making them unable to travel through some of the passages in these Nether Fortress halls. Not to mention, their drops are also a little bit better, our only worrying one being the stone sword that they can sometimes drop, but that's more of a rare occurrence. However, when it does happen, it does become kind of a hindrance. But lastly, let's talk about the blazes themselves. At first, these guys might look like an easier version of a skeleton. I mean, all they can do is really just throw out a few fire charges every couple of seconds before needing to reload, but they're a little smarter than you think. For one, if you try to hide behind cover, they'll actually hold their fire until you reappear, so we can't just stall behind cover. Also, whenever you get in close, they actually have a melee attack because they can easily punch you with their obvious hands. So we do have to be careful of that. So most fights will actually lose against these guys. And it doesn't help that the only places we can really find them are in the spawning rooms with the blaze spawners, which means whenever we're fighting one, we have a chance to spawn another, and another, which can often lead to overwhelming blaze power, which will often lead to our demise. So this is definitely going to be one of the hardest parts of a run. There are 2 lucky things that might happen to us though. For one, we might get just a single blaze in the spawning room, which will be a much more fair fight than fighting 3 at once. Another thing that might happen is a blaze might spawn in the hallway leading up to the spawning room, and if that happens, the blaze might be close enough to the nether portal not to despawn when we die. This will give us multiple chances to take it down, essentially giving us a free chance to get a blaze rod. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention the bad luck, that being, it's all up to chance whether we get a blaze rod. Remember, even though we kill a blaze, it doesn't mean that we're getting a blaze rod, which will easily lead to several dead blazes without a reward, making our situation just a little bit worse. That being said, it's finally time to get to grinding. Now that we're done with all that grinding, it's finally time to move on to more grinding, because that's only half the equation. We have the blaze rods now, but now we need ender pearls to go along with them, and 12 of them to be exact. So let's talk about how you can actually get them. There's 3 main ways we can get ender pearls in this game. The first of which is by killing endermen in the overworld, but they only spawn at night, so that leaves the entire day to do things. The second way is by killing endermen in the nether, but while they do spawn at any time of day, they are a lot more rare down here. The last way is by trading with villagers. That's because the highest level of cleric will actually give us ender pearls for rubies. But that's going to be the most complicated strategy. Now, in order to get ender pearls from a villager, we're going to need a max level cleric, which in order to get, we're going to need a brewing stand, which requires both cobblestone and a blaze rod. Now the cobblestone is easy enough, as we can just get a creeper to blow up some stone, giving us what we need. But the blaze rod means we're going to have to kill some more blazes. So that's going to be some fun in the nether. The next thing that we're going to need to do though is actually trade with the villager to level him up. And that's going to require a whole lot of topaz. So let's actually figure out how to get this mineral. One obvious way we could do this is by going deep underground, finding some emerald ore, and then causing a creeper to blow it up. But that is very inefficient, to say the least. Another way we could get emeralds is by going ahead and trading with other villagers. However, their deals aren't great. And the last real way we can get emeralds are from shipwrecks, but those are randomly spawning and aren't very efficient as well. Instead, emeralds were never the answer. The answer was rotten flesh, as clerics actually trade for that as well. And our goal is just to level them up. We don't really need emeralds per se. So instead of just trying to get emeralds to level them up, we're going to be using rotten flesh instead. Which means we might spend our nights getting ender pearls, and we might spend our nights getting rotten flesh for this wonderful trade. And by wonderful, I mean we're totally getting ripped off. But nevertheless, it's another way we're going to be spending our nights. Instead of inserting another montage here about me collecting ender pearls, I'll just jump to the point and say that it took me about 5.5 hours, but a couple of interesting things did happen. For one, our cleric actually became a husk of his former self, and a husk literally once he got bitten. So that was a lot of progress wasted. Another thing is I found a better way of dealing with endermen. You see, they despawn once day hits. But if you can bring them to your nether portal, we can actually trap them in a nether, which will give us more time to deal with them. So I was able to more efficiently kill endermen in this challenge than the blazes. So I was able to collect everything that I needed eventually, although it did still take 5.5 hours. Now that we have all the ingredients, let's go ahead and bake ourselves an Eye of Ender cake. So it's finally time to head to the end. Or at least it would be if we didn't have to get to the end portal first. and that's its own problem, so let's hop into it. The problem is that the end portal is all the way down in a stronghold about 8 minutes away, so I really don't want to die and lose my Eyes of Ender on the way. So what I ended up doing was I dug straight down to make a little passageway straight to the end portal room. Now, that has its own problem, mostly that if we jump down this hole, we'll die from fall damage. So the next thing that I did was I mined straight through solid dirt and stone to actually lead some water from the outstanding shore right into this pit, giving us a nice elevator downwards. From here, we just have to bring our Eyes of Ender all the way to the portal room and insert them into the frame, and we got ourselves an end portal. Now it's finally time to hop in and take down the final boss of the game, the Ender Dragon. For once I have some good news. While the Ender Dragon definitely is tedious grinding as we have to whittle its health down little by little, for once it's not RNG. Every hit that we do on the Ender Dragon counts after we tower up and destroy all the end crystals, which means we can finally quantify the amount of damage we're actually doing. That being said, this boss fight is not a cakewalk. We still have to actually fight it, and it fights back. So we're going to be dying quite a few times. And that's a pretty annoying thing once you realize we can't place a bed right before entering. Every time we die, we have to make the 8-minute trip back just to throw a few more punches. But we can throw as many punches as we want without repercussion, which means we can eventually finally beat the game and conclude that yes, it is possible to beat Minecraft without any wood. But I wanted to say a few words about this challenge before I go. That being, this has to be the worst challenge I've ever done yet. And I don't mean most difficult, I mean absolute worst. Let me explain. As you've probably picked up, this run had a lot of grinding. Everything from finding a crafting table to getting blaze rods, even the Ender Dragon I had to repeatedly go to the end portal frame because I couldn't place a bed. This truly was a lot of RNG, tedious grinding. It was painful. Heck, at one point I was having nightmares that somehow I got shot by a skeleton and somehow its arrow entered my inventory, causing me to fail to run and have to start over. This thing was horrible, and I would not recommend this challenge to anyone. But with that being said, I think I can finally say thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.